Hey everyone, you are watching The Business of Law, the only web TV show focusing on the challenges and the opportunities facing the legal profession. I'm Lee Pacchia. Joining me now, I'm happy to say we have the president of the Legal Marketing Association, Tim Corcoran. We're going to talk about some of the myths and bad habits he sees with respect to law firm compensation out there. Heavy, weighty topic for this afternoon. Let's start off with something we were talking about in the green room. You said strategy-aligned compensation plans are the ticket going forward for BigLaw. What do you mean exactly by that?
Sure. I wish I had coined this phrase, but I didn't. But I heard it. I wish I knew the author. It's a fantastic phrase. Essentially, if your compensation plan isn't aligned with your firm's strategy, then your compensation plan is your firm's strategy. And what it boils down to...
Why is that?
Well, for me, it means that you can have all of these different notions, these ideas for what our firm stands for, what we're trying to shoot for, what metrics matter, what activities matter. But at the end of the day, partners will act in their economic self-interest. Not because they're selfish necessarily, but because they truthfully can probably say, our leaders have established what matters to succeed here in this firm. And that's the compensation plan. So if I maximize my comp plan, I'm doing what the firm leaders want me to do. So it's not a selfish versus a firm-first approach. They're simply doing what they should do. And so when the compensation plan has different ideals than what is listed in the, here's what we stand for, it stands to reason you're going to have a conflict.
So reading into your remarks, it sounds like you are seeing a number of firms that are having a fair amount of internal infighting with respect to compensation, which I find a little bit surprising when you look at big law firms who seem to have their house in order at least.
Sure.
I wouldn't expect them to get hung up on issues like this. Why is this happening?
Well, it's happening more now because the gulf between the haves and the have-nots is greater. Some years ago...
We were just talking to Ken Zimmerman last week about that.
Yeah, sure. A few years ago, everyone was making more money every year. And so while there was a delta between the highest producer and the lowest producer, and they're all equity partners, they all get a stake, but everyone's pretty happy because they're making more each year. Now, there's a difference. Some people aren't going to stay as equity partners. Some people who are top producers have options and they can move elsewhere. And so you want to get it right. And the challenge now is that what the firm is looking for at times and what they say we want out of our partners is different than what they're paying for. And the partners are either struggling to say, I do the right things, but then at the end of the year, you fall back on the comp plan and say, you're not getting fully rewarded, or I do the right things and someone else is being paid more than I am, and I don't know how to unwind that.
So how does this get reconciled? I mean, there's a pretty large divide here between where they're supposed to be and where they are.
Sure. I think it starts with having a clear, consistent, transparent plan that's based on real data. And I think many firms lack the real data. It's astonishing sometimes when I look into some of my clients' comp plans, we realize even their definition of what a practice is different. In the time and billing system, we might have our Latin American practices defined by the partners who exist in Latin America. That's where they're based. But in another system, we run a report, and it's actually based on matters that are based in Latin America. Those two don't always reconcile, and so what are we using for our data? It's not clean, it's not normalized. Yeah. So first we have to start with a good plan with good data.
We were talking before about the notion of subjective compensation plans in big law firms. Is that something that exists? Are there big law firms out there that operate under something called the subjective compensation plan?
It's astonishing to me that there are any. It's ludicrous to me that there are many. And now there may not be a significant number that are wholly subjective, but there are significant portions of many comp plans and many law firms that I see, and my sample size is not absolute, but subjective portions where good 40%, 50% of the compensation award is based on what the executive committee or the compensation committee believes merits reward and recognition.
Why? What's the belief that makes it seem like it's better off for the firm in the short or long run?
I don't know that there's any basis in reality.
It just happens?
Other than we trust our leaders to make good decisions. And again, a couple of years ago, everyone was making more every year. It was sort of a marginal issue. But now, when these compensation awards have some pretty significant deviations, you want to make sure you get it right. So a subjective plan that no one agrees with because no one knows what I'm doing today, if it matters, will I make money from this, is a ludicrous state.
Right, and it costs the firm time and money because it's dealing with all the infighting as people start to kind of point to their checks at the end of the year and say, what the hell? Why am I getting this when I could be getting that?
I'm finding, and this happens with multiple clients of mine, so I'm not exposing anyone's failings, but multiple clients have these periods of time where they built in, we'll spend the next 6 weeks or the next 4 weeks or the next 3 weeks. Here's your process for appealing your compensation award. Here's our process for taking the executive committee on a tour of the firm to explain our awards. I mean, you're taking 2 months out of the firm management's time to explain your compensation plan when you could have a more objective, written, transparent plan, seems to me.
No, without a doubt, it's costly. Another thing I wanted to touch on, you brought up a really interesting notion in the green room about how different partners serve different roles for the firm. You kind of broke it out to about 6 or 7 different functions. I wanted to talk about Rainmakers specifically. Pointed question here, but I think it's important nonetheless. Should Rainmakers be expected to bill for their time at the law firm?
That's a good question.
Should they be compensated totally differently?
Yeah, I think there's different kinds of partners, different contributions. Much like I don't know, any sports team, a basketball team, you have different people. One guy does rebounds, one makes assists, one makes baskets, one, and so on. And so why are we surprised that not every partner has the exact same contribution, but they may still want to be rewarded as partners? So for Rainmakers specifically, there's numerous firms I work with where the Rainmakers want to be out there generating work. They can create great leverage, they can put a lot of people to work, and yet they've got to stop because their compensation is largely based on billing hours. Which seems to me a really foolish short-term misuse of their talents, particularly if they want to be a hunter, and it's so hard to do that.
Right.
Pay them to do that.
Right. I'm sure the Rainmakers want to be paid to be hunters, so to speak. How does the rest of the partnership class and firms like that view that notion?
Why do we look at a 5'2" point guard who's great at making assists and say, why are your rebounds down? We shouldn't expect that of him. In the same way, we've got a lot of partners whose compensation is minimized or at least impaired by their inability to generate a lot of new work. But we don't have the data, or we don't analyze the contribution they make at making the work profitable, or generating cross-selling, or generating additional repeat work for that client. Or maybe just every partner wants this partner on their job, on their project, because he or she delivers.
Yeah.
So different contribution, rewarded differently, measured differently.
Is there any firm out there that pays Rainmakers separate and apart from rank and file partners?
Well, there are some certainly who pay for eat what you kill, and if you want to generate work and that's all you want to do.
No, I'm talking about a totally different model. Does that exist yet? Are we heading in that direction?
I haven't seen one that treats them as a separate class. No, I just think it's different ranges of the spectrum. Eat what you kill in one and Lockstep on the other.
Do you think we'll get there?
I think we have to. I think the economic reality of the way law firms are being run today is we have to recognize that not every partner, not every equity partner is going to look the same. And so we have to recognize different talents and skills.
Speaking of Lockstep, what's the future of Lockstep compensation? We had I think the managing partner from Clifford Chance about a week or two ago say that that method of paying people is here to stay. It's part and parcel with who the firm is. Other people I talk to say Lockstep might not be around in 10 years. Where do you come down?
I think a lot of the institutions that law firms have today will persist for a very long time, even if they're bad ideas. I don't know that Lockstep is a terrible idea, but I don't know why we're surprised. The clients I work with on compensation plans, when they're the exact opposite of eat what you kill, they say, look, no one fights over origination credit. We all share equally. But then they wonder why no one's incentive to get out of their office and go generate work, because I'm going to be paid no matter what I do. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but why not start to incent certain behavior? It doesn't make everyone an equal rainmaker, but you start to say, you know what, it's okay to have a Lockstep for our base compensation and then performance incentives for different activities. So I think a modified Lockstep is more likely than the straight Lockstep.
Interesting stuff. Compensation, it's what everyone cares about at the end of the day, I guess. Tim, thanks so much for stopping by. That's Tim Corcoran, president of the Legal Marketing Association and consultant to law firms. If you'd like to see more of the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check us out online. You can find us at MimesisWebTV.com. There's a YouTube channel and a Twitter handle under the same name. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.